Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so today we're going to be doing our add-ins for our coil vessels. I'm going to show you some different versions of them and how to make sure that they stay stable. So, every single time that you start to make any add-in, you need to make sure that it's very nicely scratched up and ready to go. So you need to make sure that you score the edges and that you are wetting everything, that everything's ready to go. So I'm going to show you the basic coil. So I'm just going to pinch the edge, and just like we started our base, I'm going to roll up. And I'm going to roll until I'm happy with how big it is. And that's just the basic coil. So I'm going to roll a little bit more. And then there's another option of rolling it the opposite way. So I'm going to cut this coil off, and I'm going to pinch and go the other way. And then I'm going to, again, roll. And I'm smushing together just a little bit as I go. And then I can kind of play with these two sides to see how I want to make them so they look about the same size. So I'm going to press it down just a little bit, and then I'm actually going to weld it together on one of the sides. The reason I'm doing this is before I put it on my vessel, I want to make sure it's really stable. So I'm welding it across. And just like I welded the base of my vessel, I'm going to weld this together to make sure it's all nice and safe. So now when I flip it over, I'm still going to have my spirals. Alright, so if you just wanted to make one of these singularly, you could literally just cut them apart and smooth it down. And that's how you make the spirally shape. So if you want to make a square shape, these here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Again, you have your coil. I'm going to make it just slightly thinner. And all you do is you lay it flat on itself and then stand it up, and I'm going to pinch the sides just a little bit. I'm going to push and pinch. Push, pinch, and I'm pinching to make sure I'm making nice right angles as I go. So I'm pushing with my thumb to flatten it out, and I'm pinching with my finger. And I keep going until I have my coil as large as I want it, and I can cut it off. And again, you're going to do the same thing where you weld it together on one of the sides. So I'm blending it. All together. So again, I blended it before I put it on, and you can still see the outside. If you want to make a braid, you need to make sure that you're making it really skinny. So if my normal coil is the thickness of my pointer finger, if you're making a braid or a twist, you need to make sure that you're making it much thinner and keeping it very wet, because if it's thin, it's more likely to dry out. So I roll my coil, and then I'm going to cut it into 3 equal lengths. So I'm going to keep making it really skinny, and I'm making it this thin because when I start to braid it, it's going to get really bulky. So I'm going to kind of bend it. I'm going to try to make as even as possible 3 equal pieces. So I'm going to come here, and then I'm going to lay them down with all 3 pieces directly in front of me. And I just find that this is easier to do. If you have a different way that you want to braid, it's fine. And then you just start to braid. You go all the way across. And I try to make sure that it's nice and tight as I'm going, so that I can see less of the air in between it. And this is the only one that you're going to have to do that you don't weld them together beforehand, because otherwise you're going to lose the aesthetic of the braid. Aesthetic just means what it looks like. So I get all the way to the bottom, and then I'm actually going to pinch them back together. And so now I have my braid. So when I go to attach it, I'm going to make sure that I am scratching up the surface of the bottom of it. So I would take my needle tool, and this isn't my needle tool because I can't find where I put it, and I'd scratch up the bottom before I attached it to my vessel. If I need to make another one, I'd just make a second half. So, just some basics. Oh, and if you want to do a twist. A twist is when you just make it a little bit thinner as well. And you're going to cut it into equal lengths, so you're just going to fold it in half because you just need 2 for a twist. So I'm going to fold it in half, get it cut, and then I'm actually going to pinch it together, and then I'm just going to twist it. And I'm actually going down with the twist so that it doesn't break. I'm just kind of going along. And then I'm going to pinch at the bottom. And there's my twist. Again, before I put it onto my vessel, I'd make sure I scratched up the entire bottom of it so it was ready to go. The very last one I'm going to show you is the very popular squiggly line. So I'm going to make sure it's a little bit thinner than, again, my normal coil. And this one, you need to make sure that you scratch up the whole thing before you go. But if you make a really long starting point, you're not going to have that much room for the rest of your add-ins, so be aware of that. But all you have to do for this one is just go back and forth. And if it starts to break, just bend it slowly. Make sure you're bending it slowly. See how it broke there? I didn't bend it slow enough because I also had a thin area. So I'm just going to go back and forth, all the way, trying to make it as even as possible. And you go all the way across with my piece. Oops. Take that piece off because it broke. Alright. And then I'm going to stick this one back up there. And then I'm actually going to weld it on. I'm supporting it with my finger. And I'd actually start my next one here and then keep going up. Alright, so I'm going to press it down just a little bit so they're all the same length. And then again, I'm going to weld it all together. This is making sure it's solid and stable. And I'm actually going to go in both directions to make sure it all stays together. And then again, before I put it on, I would scratch it. And now when you make this, it's going to create a straight line. So when you're putting it on your vessel, you have to curve it so that it fits around it. And then you would go back, support it with your hands, and weld it on. So these were our basics on add-ins. If you want to do any other add-ins, you're more than welcome to. But a pattern on the actual coil does not count as an add-in. If you have any other questions, or if you think of any other add-ins but you're not sure how to make them, just ask.